All right, Chris. I think we're recording, so we're live. Awesome.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Well,
Good
we haven't
morning.
got Sasha with us today, but we'll just do a quick summary of what Orchard has been up to this week and the big things that are going on in our lives, with consideration towards Elastos and just the wider crypto space at the moment. So, Joachim, I guess from your point of view, you might be interested in what we discussed with Rong.
Yeah. I couldn't make it to the call. It's a bit unfortunate, but I'm really curious to hear from you. Pretty much everything, because community knows obviously that you wrote that proposal, or the ideas.
Yeah, yeah.
You outlined quite clearly, I think, what kind of
This one
problems
you're
there are
talking
to be
about.
solved. Oh, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. And I think there are plenty of challenges for Elastos to tackle. You outlined, I think, all of them. But I'm very curious to hear how that went, the conversation, and your view on things.
Sure. Well, we had a call. I thought it was initially just going to be Rong and myself. Donnie and Sash ended up joining the call, but actually they were on receive for most of it, because Rong and I were doing most of the talking. I'm not going to go into details. I'm certainly not going to repeat exactly what Rong said. But let's just say I left the call frustrated, and I think he did too, because we are coming at this from two slightly different angles. He is very protective, rightly, I think, of the Bitcoin that we were discussing, and he's nervous about what would happen to that if he allowed it outside of his control, or the control of the multi-signature wallet that it's in. And I think that's fair. That is a real concern. This is a passion project of his. This has been a life's work. They did a great job raising money in 2017, and they've been very prudent with it. And therefore there's a lot left. But I think, as I've said before, there's a problem when you spend too much money and you go into debt. But I also think there's a problem when you don't spend enough money at the right time, particularly if you have those resources. So the reason that I made this proposal about a transition of the EF is because we knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's been in discussion for years, actually, literally years. And we thought it was going to be 2021. And so it was written as a friendly piece of advice, really. I mean, I would call it something like a strawman paper. So, it's just, it's built of straw so that you can rip it apart easily. There's nothing solid about it at all, apart from, in my view, the logic that it is based on. And the recommendations are exactly that. They're not demands. They are recommendations made through a logical deduction from the facts that are presented in there. And I gave it to Rong 48 hours before everyone else. I gave it to the council 24 hours before I released it publicly. And we discussed it. So, it's got an Orchard stamp on it. It's not like it's one madman's idea. I think there's been a contribution across three bright people into the document. And it presented just an idea for an alternative option. I've called it the third leg of a stool. So you've got the EF as one leg, propping up the whole Elastos project. You've got the CRC propping up the project. But actually, we know that there's a missing element. There's a tangible lack of professional functionality within the current construction. And if you look at any really successful project, they have a whole stream of developmental lines. Now, some of those are being done at the moment by the EF and the teams working within the EF and the CRC to an extent, or the community through funding by the CRC. But the CRC isn't really an operational body. It's a governing body that just makes decisions about what the community want to do. So there is a third element that's missing, which I think, is the bit that the charity might answer. It would enable all of the pieces of the puzzle that are currently not being done to be done within a regulated framework. And I tried to make the point that this is something that Rong and the other members of the board could determine, a charity has to function beneath its governing document, its mandate, and that doesn't exist yet. So, the whole purpose of these recommendations is to debate it and to discuss it and to work out what that governing document would be like. And then the charity could be set up around that. So
it could be anyone, right? It could be run by Donnie and the team. I mean, those guys are awesome. It could be a whole mix of professionals across the globe. It could be anyone, pretty much, right? I mean, it's not written like it has to be Orchard.
It's not. No, absolutely not. And I think we're just putting forward. I was trying to describe what you'd have to do to get to that point where you could then create it. This is an Orchard project and it has to be run by Orchard. That's not the case at all. Once you've written the governing document, you can then recruit who you want in as either trustees who can have no financial benefit from the running of it, or the people that would actually be governing and running a charity, and we all know of massive charities that have a lot of money and do a great deal of good. And they have to have an operating system and a sort of functioning hierarchy. And that's what people expect and actually are judged upon by, in the UK, something called the Charity Commission, which would look hard at how the charity was functioning and whether it was doing what it said it was going to do. So, I mean, I think there's very little risk in it. But anyway, the conversation ended with him saying that he wasn't interested in releasing that Bitcoin at the moment. So I think there could be another series of conversations about actually the concept rather than what resources it has. I mean, quite frankly, I just put forward a figure for debate. It doesn't have to be. There was no demand there about how much of the BTC goes to it at all. You could set it up completely independently, but why not give it a really good head start with a decent amount of funding that I believe you could regenerate through the charitable process anyway.
Yeah, and I think that in the crypto space, it's not completely new, right? I mean, we've all seen the 4,000% that ADA Cardano did in a year. But one of the reasons why that happens is also because it's very well organized. Even though, I followed some discussions about that the whole ecosystem is pretty empty still there. That part they do really well. Why? Because they have funds for those who are developing. They have community funds and community managers that are super active. And they have the business leg as well. Okay, for Elastos, we wouldn't present a business leg, but more of a charity leg because it fits better to Elastos and the identity. But it makes sense. And it doesn't really matter how much eventually you allocate to it, but by doing nothing, you can also expect nothing to happen. Or the opposite, or even worse. Yeah. We always said, 2020, make or break year. And we believe that. Oh, there he is. Yeah, that's Albert.
And that was my feeling. Not taking a decision is actually a decision.
It is a decision. And, 2020 was a make or break year. And that's what we said from the start of 2020 was what the EF members said at the start of 2020. And we all know where we are right now. I mean, we changed strategy again. And I don't mind, I don't really mind that we had to decide, or the EF had to decide to change strategy, also from the technical development point of view. That's fine because that's how you grow, and that's okay. But we know what did not work last year, so let's see how we can solve those problems. I mean, it should be that simple. And adding a third leg to the stool actually makes a lot of sense to, I think, a lot of people in the community. But, well, we need to do it together.
Yeah, it needs to. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it can be proposed by the community. The whole community can think it's a good idea, or even 52%, 51% might think it's a good idea. But if it doesn't have any resources, then it will just take years to set up. You could set it up. It could be done without any support from the EF at all. But, I predict that would take 18 to 24 months to get it off the ground, to find the people that want to invest in it and to at the minimum 18 months. Whereas, you know, you could do this and almost overnight create something that is ready to go. You know, I mean, I don't think it would take more than 2 or 3 months of decent work, and we could be operating with a really clear mandate and actually spending some money, not the whole lot, but just some money on the areas that we know that we need to do, like education, you know, like dealing with universities and academia, like strategic partnerships and programs to incubate small ideas, you know, and you could do all of that with the aim of returning money back into the charity, because you keep fundraising, you know, you keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it creates new audiences, you know, outside this current bubble that we're all in. Anyway, it was a good go. But, you know, I published it on the 10th of March, so it's already the 21st. And, you know, the first recommendation, which you can see there, is just, you know, would the EF please just fund a discussion? You know, that's what it is, you know, and take a couple of, or 6 weeks, it said there. So you've got about 4.5 weeks left. Just fund the discussion across the community so that we can determine what happens when the EF transitions, you know, if and when it does. That's really all the first one was asking for. And then, you know, the second was, hang on a minute, I can't remember. Oh, draw up and publish their timeline and roadmap for that transition, having agreed it in the first part. You know, so, and again, you know, an extra 2 weeks. So just working within a timeline, within a framework, not doing anything that shouldn't be expected by either members of the EF who are currently employed, who probably want to know how long they can be employed for by the EF, or at least paid for by the EF. Anyway, I think there's probably a conceptual divide now that about how to move forward, which is a shame, because I think that would have been a really good solution. But I'm still open for the discussion, and we can see how we could take it forward.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I'm passionate about this idea. I think, like you know, the idea of an open web, the idea of being able to own your data is brilliant. And actually, I really like the fact that this started as this global organization with this purpose and vision, and I'd love to keep supporting that. As I'm sure
our goal obviously was not to create a power struggle or anything, right? I mean, it is just, we see certain challenges that have not been solved and that have to be solved in order for the ecosystem to be successful. And there are some ideas on how to solve that. Our goal is not to take on and take out or take away any of the livelihood from the developers right now or anything like that, right? It's not our goal to put them out of business. I mean, it's not, because I was a little bit surprised actually to see one tweet by one council member that started talking about greed, and it came at a time that I suspected it was about this. But this has got nothing to do with greed. We don't want to take other people's livelihoods. I mean, that's not the goal. The goal is to make Elastos work and to solve the pretty big problems that we've been facing. So, well, anyway, let's not stay on this topic for too much longer, because we've got quite good news as well coming up from
we've got some really good news. I suppose to end it, you know, am I frustrated? Am I going to walk away from the project? Yeah, I'm a bit frustrated, but I'm not going to walk away from it. But, you know, I think it's certainly demonstrated to me again the fact that the EF is not a functioning organization in the way that I had hoped it would be. And therefore, I think it further reinforces why this would be necessary. But let's not forget, however, that under the slightly random strategy that we have seen develop over the last couple of years, which is highly centralized, actually, because I think it's only the decision-making of a couple of people. But underneath that, we have seen the development of some extraordinary technologies, you know, and there's a lot to be proud of in Elastos. It's an amazing project when you think of it, with a real depth of technological advantage. And you can just see that in the EF-funded Tomb Technologies team that is working really hard, and the Trinity and the others. But, you know, with DIDs coming out and with Profile coming out soon, and Vouch, it's all being tested now. There's some really positive news, I think, that will help drive Elastos. And there are people recognizing how undervalued it is. So as a project, I think we'll see some extraordinary growth over the next couple of months. I just want to accelerate it even faster and grow that community outside of the crypto bubble.
Absolutely with you there. And that's what we've been doing for the past 3.5 years.
Yeah, well, we've been trying hard.
We went to France to the UNESCO blockchain conference, and we've done so much that we've been trying to do our part, at least as a regular community member.
You can only do so much without resources, and that's the key. Strategy is a reconciliation of ends, ways, and means. So you can have the vision. You've got to have methods to do it, the ways, but you've got to have means. You've got to have resources. And you and I working on a Sunday morning is one thing.
It's not enough. It's not
enough. We need to really give it some resource, and for the right reasons. Anyway, there's a mixture of of good and bad news, as always. There's always two sides of a coin, but we've got some good news, Joachim.
Yeah, well, I mean, next week, Tuesday, at what time is it?
I think it's going to be 1700 UK time, so 1800 CET. I just need to confirm that with our guests, but we're running a webinar. So Orchard is leading on this, and it's nothing actually to do with Elastos as such, but it's to do with the philosophies and the principles that sit behind it. And one of our projects, the main project that we're now focusing on, which is called Human Consensus as a Service. We mentioned it last week. And this is the idea that we can make digital democracy on demand much easier than it is currently. And we can give a voice to individuals, to institutions, and the whole spectrum in a way that is being done now through things like market research and market opinion companies, and also some organizations that are trying to drive employee and stakeholder engagement. But actually, it's all a bit dislocated. And what we want to do is build the network that sits underneath that, and probably link it with something like DID, the Elastos DIDs through Profile or something, so that you can ask for answers to your issues and challenges and problems or feedback from a trusted audience, and I think that's going to be really interesting. So although we're not specifically talking about that, the title of the webinar is called Can Blockchain Save Democracy? And we've got 5 amazing guests. I'll just explain who they are. So we've got Andrew Darley. Andrew is one of our advisors. He's just left IBM and was the head of IBM in Europe, or I think IBM blockchain in Europe.
Yeah.
So really good guy.
Pretty good advice to have on the team, by the way. His insights have already been super valuable to all of us. So that's yeah.
Yeah, and George.
Yeah.
So George Zarkadakis, the author of Cyber Republic, he's also one of our advisors and has been really crucial in helping us form our ideas around citizen democracy. And then we've got a guy called Dr. Vijak Hadidi, or is also known as Dr. V, who is a professor at South Bank University, but really focused on innovation and a pro-social activity. And One Society. He's a really good guy with a lot of with a very deep and broad background and network. And I think we'll come at this with some really good ideas. And then we've got 2 women who have offered to speak as well, Gillian Godsill and Genevieve Leville. And they are deeply involved in the blockchain space, but also they come at this from a really interesting perspective. So along with Sash, they are going to be on the panel, if you like. I'll be hosting it, and we just have a discussion. I want it to be as free-ranging as possible around blockchain, around technology, and around democracy, and what's looking at what's wrong with current democracy, and we'll be looking at the death of truth. We'll be looking at the pressures of social media, all of the reasons actually that we came into the Elastos project. And then, we might at the end start a little bit of a discussion around HCaaS and what technology could bring to help solve those problems.
Yeah, I think I'm very much looking forward to it. And in the meantime, I've been working on the white paper for HCaaS. HCaaS as the title. I've written quite a lot of white papers because it just helps me structure my thoughts. So over the 3.5 years with Orchard, I think that I wrote maybe 10 white papers for all different use cases. And but this one is the one that really challenges and excites me the most. And the principles behind HCaaS and the number of verticals, the number of different markets where you could apply it to, it's pretty big. But I think that deserves a separate topic after the webinar as well with South, where we can dedicate to this topic. We're working on the branding, working on website, working on many different things to really get this going. But the webinar is going to be a very good start to get that rolling. And it's my goal to have let's call it the V1 version of the white paper public by the webinar, so that people can start reading up and hopefully get as excited as I am, because I think this is going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to, that's our priority focus now as Orchard. So, we also find out next week, next Friday, the 26th of March, we find out whether or not we've got the grant from the UK Innovate Smart Grant. That could be life-changing. So that's 3 or 4 days before the webinar. So we might reveal whether we've got it at the webinar, because that would just give us an injection of cash to drive this forward. And the purpose of the webinar, really, other than just to have a bit of fun, is to try and establish a foothold of a relevant audience for our idea of human consensus as a service. So, it's the very first step into building this audience of interested parties outside of the usual crypto sphere, because the next strategic step for us is fundraising. So whether we get the grant from UK Innovate or not, almost is, well, it's not irrelevant. It would be hugely relevant. But if we get it, we would just have that injection straight away. If we don't get it, then we'll carry on down the route of looking for investment funding from, probably a private round of some sort of token sale, and then a series of other token sales, and also just crowdfunding using the sort of normal route where we might have to give away some equity. But yeah, we're really serious about this. And I think what you'll see is the development of HCaaS as a network, and then our first service, which we've named, but we won't reveal that just yet, coming out hopefully by certainly all the plans come out, and then the products arriving towards the end of the year.
I think that for sure we should be able to test, and that's really testing the product by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah.
But that would be with a small group of trusted, trusted clients. Let's call them. Let's keep it as neutral as possible. So people that we know, companies that we know, and that are very much willing to test this with us, so that we can optimize it. Won't be fully open to the crowd yet by the end of the year, but we'll stay open and we'll keep everyone involved in the whole development of the process. But next year is going to be interesting for sure. Then.
Depends how much you can raise, because that then determines how much you can do. So if we don't raise much, we'll take it in nice small steps. If we raise a lot, then we can employ more people, and we can really drive and accelerate the product development. But this is a really new area, so in terms of what we want to bring to it. So yeah, I consider it to be research and development for another few months. But yeah, exciting times for us, and I'm really pleased that actually, in some ways, I think in some ways, with what else is going on in Elastos, I think we can support that. But actually, this has got to be our focus now to grow this, and where we can, we'll use the Elastos technologies, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are in a position where we will be able to cherry pick the best technologies for our use case. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. The other thing that I like about our approach is that the grant part of it is a central part of the route that we want to take in terms of financing, because there's so much R&D involved, and there are grants for that sort of stuff. We need to get as much focus on the R&D side of things, because that's what those grants are for, right? I mean, exactly. After that, we will be able to commercialize things, but in the very early stages, let's go all out on the grants, because it wastes less, doesn't waste a lot of money there from the crowd, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the point. You know, the grants are designed exactly for that purpose, and you know, you can experiment, and there's nothing wrong with experimenting and failing in certain areas. So, you know, you close down all of the avenues that are not working, and that helps you then develop and iterate towards the ones that do. So, yeah, I mean, all of that is planned, and I really hope that we land that, because you know, we would start in earnest with a really good team. You know, we've got a great set of advisors and some really good people on board, and great community support from Elastos, of course. You know, the wider Cyber Republic.
Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, that's the exciting news from our end, and I guess if you're interested, if you are listening at this point to this, and you want to listen and hear more about it, then just follow one of our Twitter channels or Telegram, and we will put out information about how to sign up for the webinar on that over the next course of the next week. Absolutely, we'll just put all the links in the description. Yeah.
One thing that I always wanted to say in my life, in the description below.
Yeah, so like and click or whatever.
Yeah, like, click, and subscribe as well.
Yeah, we'll get the hang of it one day.
Yeah. And yeah, so thank you so much, Chris, there for sharing your thoughts on the conversation with Rong, but most importantly, the very exciting stuff that's going to happen next week and the week thereafter. Tuesday, the 30th it was, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 30th of March, 1800 CET, and of course it'll be recorded. So if if that's the middle of the night for you, then you'll be able to watch it later from our YouTube channel. But if you can be there live, what we'll do over the course of next week is ask some questions of those who are signing up about what you want to hear from the guest speakers. We'll be talking, asking you to comment during the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to bounce some ideas around. So yeah, it should be fun.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be really, really, really nice. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Great.
And, we're going to do another one Sunday next week.
Yep.
So stay tuned for the next topic around what Orchard has been up to, because we do quite a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Joachim. Thanks for hosting, and we'll get Sash on next week as well.
We will. Okay. Cheers.
Bye.